What's going on, guys? Tower number 9 here with another Star Wars Unlimited TCG preview card review. This time we have a bunch of cards that were previewed on May 2nd. So let's get into it. Spoiler season has started, and there are a lot of cards to be shown. So I think we had 6 or 7 new ones just today. Yeah, let's take a look. So first up, we have Hunter Outcast Sergeant. This is a card that Fantasy Flight previewed on, I believe, their Twitter or X or whatever feed. This is a 7-cost ground, or I'm sorry, it is a leader, and it deploys at 7 resources as a ground unit with 5/8 overwhelm. So the leader action is one resource, reveal, or one for one resource and exhaust, reveal a resource you control. If it shares a name with a friendly unique unit, return the resource to its owner's hand and put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. So this is actually a form of card draw. If you have resourced a unique unit and you later play another copy of that unit, you can use this action to take the one that you resourced, put it into your hand, and replace it with a card from the top of your deck. So you're essentially gaining a card in hand. Um, Now, one downside of this ability is that gaining a copy of a unique unit that you already have in play is normally not very good because you can't really use it, but you could then potentially resource it again next turn. You could use it as a replacement if that unit is defeated, and it can synergize with other abilities. Um, and when Hunter deploys as a unit, he is a 5/8 with Overwhelm, as I think I mentioned earlier. He has the Fringe and Clone traits, and on attack, you may reveal a resource you control. If it shares a name with a friendly unique unit, return the resource to its owner's hand and put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. So basically the same thing. Yeah, so this is basically a conditional card draw ability that works when you're playing multiple copies of unique units. I'm to me, this ability does not strike me as the strongest overall. The 5/8 stats at 7 resource deployment is, I believe, the same as Darth Vader, Dark Lord of the Sith. But Overwhelm is probably substantially weaker than Vader's on attack, deal 2 damage to a unit ability. Um, Overall, I think I'm going to have to do some testing or experimentation or whatever, see this being played by others in order to really evaluate it. It doesn't look all that strong to me at first. Cassian has what I think is a better card draw type ability and does not see very much play, though I do think that Cassian's stats are less efficient. It'll be interesting to see how this ends up. All right, next up, we are going to take a look at Cripple Authority. This card was previewed by iRebel. And this is a 2-cost aggression heroism event. Draw a card. Each opponent who controls more resources than you discards a card from their hand. Um, so this is a really interesting card. So it's an event that both draws a card and can force a discard on your opponents. It does require the opponents to have more resources than you to discard. And so this is what I immediately think of when I think of this is that this is kind of a counterplay to ramp or to decks that want to keep resourcing longer than you. So as an example of that, a Sabine deck will often stop resourcing um, at like 4 to 6, depending on situational factors. And, an Iden red control deck is probably going to keep resourcing up to 9 or something. So if you're playing the deck that can stop resourcing sooner, this can be a way to get a card and to force a discard from your opponent. We're already seeing some decks that are using discard tactics against control. So for instance, Chariot Red often has a kind of mid-range sort of build, and then the strategy against control is to side in cards that force discard. So things like K2SO, Force Throw is usually already in there and doesn't need to be sided in, but Forced Surrender. And this could be another, this could be another tool in that toolbox. And I think it could be strong. It can potentially cause multiple opponents to discard in Twin Suns. Overall, I think its power level is probably a bit lower than Spark of Rebellion because you don't get to snipe a specific card. You do get to draw a card, though. So this card, if the opponent has more resources than you, is actually card advantage, whereas Spark of Rebellion is card neutral. One other note is that I think this card is very good against Han Solo in particular, who often incurs card disadvantage on himself to get a temporary resource boost. Playing this could be pretty harsh because not only do you draw and they lose a card, but they didn't even really get a permanent resource out of it, so they could be hit pretty hard by this ability, I believe. We'll have to see if it works out like that in practice, but overall seems like a nice tool for some of these decks to kind of attack the hand of some of the bigger control decks. All right, next up we have Oh, and one other note, sorry, we'll go back for a sec. One other note is that Cripple Authority is a trick. Right now, the trick synergy is with Jabba the Hutt, which is villainy and not heroism, which means those two don't really coexist very well together, but it could be relevant in the future. All right, next up we have Omega, part of the squad. She was also previewed by iRebel. 2 cost 2/2. This is not a good stat line, but searches your top 5 for a clone card. The most direct, and there is one other ability. Ignore the aspect penalty on the first clone unit you play each round, and Omega is a Cunning Heroism card. So the most direct parallel that I see here is probably with Mon Mothma. So Mon Mothma is similarly an inefficiently statted 2-cost unit. I think Mon Mothma is a 1/3 that does a search. Mon Mothma searches for a rebel card. Omega searches for a clone card. Omega also offers that aspect penalty removal on your first clone unit, but 2/2 is probably not as good a stat line as 1/3 for something like this. Also, because Omega is herself a clone, if you play Omega, Omega was the first clone unit you played that round, so you cannot use this ability to ignore the aspect penalty on another clone that you play later in the round. I think that this is, I think it could be handy, but I'm a little worried about this because if you compare to Hera Syndulla, having your aspect penalty removal be tied to a unit seems a bit risky. Maybe there will be other cards that offer a similar effect, but as it stands, I'm not sure that I would want to rely on this ability to play out of aspect cards. Overall, I'm not really thrilled with this, to be honest with you. It could work, but I don't know. It seems like it's a little risky to rely on having a 2/2 unit remain in play to get that aspect penalty removal. I'm not sure that's going to be something that you can do very easily. The when played ability here might synergize with self-bounce cards. And it is also important to note, you could just ignore the aspect penalty removal part of this card completely and say, I'm not playing anything out of aspect. I'm just using this as a 2-cost 2/2 that tutors for a thing. And that might be a more reliable way to go, to be honest with you. So I don't think this card is terrible. Like, Mon Mothma is already being played. And Mon Mothma, so the when played, when it's synergized with self-bounce cards, I mean things like Pirated Starfighter, the new McClunky card that doesn't work here because this isn't Underworld. Bright Hope. Bright Hope and Mon Mothma is already kind of a combo. So you play Mon Mothma and search up a card, and then you play Bright Hope, bounce Mon Mothma, draw another card. You could easily do that same thing with Omega. Play Omega, search up a card, play Bright Hope, bounce Omega, play Omega again, search up a card. Could be a good way to get some card draw going. So I'm not thrilled with the aspect penalty removal, but I do think that she could still see some play. All right, next up we have Deathwatch Loyalist. This was previewed by Roll On Gaming, and it is a 3-cost 3/3 aggression villainy ground unit. It has the Mandalorian and Trooper traits and both the Grit and Overwhelm keywords, so +1 power for each damage on it, and when attacking an enemy unit, deal excess damage to the opponent's base. It's an interesting unit. So 3 for 3/3 isn't a good stat line. You do get 2 keywords with it. Grit and Overwhelm are not synergistic with the stats here. So Grit works better when you have more HP. Overwhelm works better when you have more power. But both of these do scale with upgrades. One thing that strikes me as interesting is that if you have the Energy Conversion Lab, you can ambush this guy against a 2/3 target, take it out, and then you're going to be a 5/1 after that, and a 5/1 with Overwhelm, which can potentially take out another unit, even something more expensive, and deal some Overwhelm damage at the same time. Might be a useful option. Grand Inquisitor can ready this guy, dealing 2 damage to him, and that means again that he's now a 5/1 Overwhelm, which will allow you to maybe do some damage. The Trooper trait gives some additional synergies as well. The Mandalorian trait, I think the Mandalorian synergies that we've seen so far have been heroism rather than villainy, but it's possible there will be some villain Mandalorian synergies as well. And this card does prove that villain Mandalorians are going to be in the set. So this was something, I think we had seen a lot of heroism Mandalorian cards with things like Bo-Katan, the Mandalorian, This Is the Way. But this card proves that they are going to do some villain Mandalorians as well, and I do think that's cool. So not overall my favorite card in terms of immediate power level, but I think it's interesting in terms of what it forecasts for other stuff. And it also plays into the Mandalorian theme of upgrades. Nothing on this card mentions upgrades, but this guy scales a lot with upgrades. Because both Grit and Overwhelm are things that work better when you have more stats. And, I could envision a world where you play this guy and then maybe you even entrench him. And now he's a 6/6 with Grit and Overwhelm. And Overwhelm can make up for not being able to attack the enemy base directly if you're crushing smaller units and doing that Overwhelm damage. So It's an interesting way that they have designed a card that synergizes with that upgrades theme without having any text that mentions upgrades explicitly. So kind of cool there. All right, next up we have Echo Restored, also previewed by Roll On Gaming, a 4-cost 4/4 ground unit in Command Heroism. And he has Restore 2. So 4-cost 4/4 with Restore 2 is a decent base profile, but it's a little bit weak because you can look at Kanan Jarrus, who is a 4-cost 4/5 with an on-attack ability that is usually going to be either Restore 1 or Restore 2, depending on situational factors. And Kanan also has really good trait synergy with both the Force and Rebel traits. We haven't seen Fringe or Clone Synergy. Well, we've seen a little bit of Clone Synergy actually with Omega, but we haven't seen much Clone Synergy yet. Could be more on the way, though. Um, However, Echo also has this when played ability. So when played, you may discard a card from your hand, give 2 experience tokens to a unit in play with the same name as the discarded card. This could conceivably be really strong, in my opinion. So discarding a card as a cost isn't great, but 2 experience is a big boost. You know, there's cards like Wing Leader. Like Wing Leader is pretty widely played in large part just for giving that 2 experience and having a very weak unit. Echo could be 4 for a, like, honestly pretty beefy unit, like not the most efficient at its cost, but if you're getting that and the 2 experience, that could be really solid. And a funny note is I believe you can actually target Echo himself with this. So if you had 2 copies of Echo, you could play Echo, discard an Echo from your hand to give 2 experience to the one that you played. So 4 cost 6/6 seems pretty good. And that could be exceptionally scary with the Energy Conversion Lab. Another really interesting use of this is with leaders who have units. So the same name refers, I believe, only to title and not subtitle in this game. So I believe that I believe there was a ruling that regional governor, for instance, would block all instances of a card by name, even if it had a different subtitle. Um, and so in this case, I believe you could, like, let's say that you're playing a Sabine command deck, a green Sabine deck, and you have Sabine, you've deployed your leader Sabine. I believe you could play Echo and discard unit Sabine in order to give 2 experience to leader Sabine. So that's a nice little benefit there, and there are a lot of leaders that have units. I believe about half of the ones that we've seen that we have in the first set do. So we have things like, you know, Luke and Unit Luke that you probably don't want to discard Unit Luke, since it's such a bomb card. Vader and Unit Vader, Boba and Unit Boba, Tarkin and Unit Tarkin, and so on. And that might be a nice application of this, especially because upgrades tend to be better on leaders. This also has a nice synergy with Hunter's ability. So Hunter has that ability that allows you to to take a unique unit that you resourced into your hand if you have a copy of that unique unit in play, and to replace it with a card from the top of your deck. You can use that ability to set up Echo's ability. So, you know, let's say let's say that you have, unit Sabine in play and that you resourced a unit Sabine earlier. You could potentially use Hunter's ability to get that Sabine from your resources into hand, and then discard it when you play Echo. So nice little synergy there. And the fact that Hunter's ability is pseudo card draw helps mitigate the discard aspect of Echo's ability. So I think this guy could be really cool. You know, we'll have to see how it works exactly, and we'll also have to make sure that my understanding of the rules here is correct, both with respect to the leader and unit thing and with respect to him being able to target himself. But as it stands, I think this guy could be pretty cool. All right, let's move on to the next card. We have Costa Reeves, Loyal Night Owl, my mistake, which was previewed by Rebel Resource. Rebel Resource had a cool video where he also had an interview. It was both the previews and also a designer interview, which I thought was cool. So interesting stuff there. And I am going to have a link to all these. I'm going to have a link to all of the content creator previews that I'm discussing here in the video description below, so you can check out the original videos and their thoughts on that if you want to see those. But continuing for now, this is Casca Reeves, Loyal Night Owl, 4-cost 4/5 aggression, heroism, Mandalorian, and trooper traits. On attack, if this unit is upgraded, you may deal 2 damage to a ground unit. So 4-cost for 4/5 is on curve for the stats. The traits are relevant. And she gets a strong on attack ability, but only when she's upgraded. So it's probably slightly weak when you first play it. Like 4 for 4/5 and blank is not that good. If you think a simple way to think of this is that you could have played a Wampa, which is 4 for 4/5 with Overwhelm, If you play Casca and don't upgrade her, she's a bit worse than that, although the trait synergy might make a difference and the heroism aspect might make a difference, but she has really interesting scaling. So no immediate impact maybe starts to be a problem at this cost, but you can often get away with playing a 4-cost card with no immediate impact. And if you upgrade her and then swing, that could work pretty well. Her ability can be used to pierce shields, similar to Unit Sabine, so you can use the on attack to hit the same ground unit that you're attacking, remove its shield, and then have the main attack damage go through. And I think that she could be especially strong with upgrades that let you attack. So we've already seen Snapshot Reflexes, which is a 1-cost upgrade that gives +1/+1, and when played, you may attack with the attached unit. And I think that there's the Hot Shot DL44 blaster, which is a similar thing where I believe that's a 1-cost upgrade that gives you +2. I believe it's a 1-cost upgrade that gives you +2 power, but if you play it for its smuggle cost, you get to attack as well. So those seem like they would be quite synergistic with this ability, allowing you to both upgrade and attack at once to sort of catch your opponent by surprise. Overall, Casca seems like, and also my apologies if I'm pronouncing Casca wrong. It's been a while since I've seen these episodes, but I think that overall this is a pretty solid. I think overall this is a pretty solid ability, and we'll see whether or not there are enough good upgrades to use with her to make this card worthwhile. All right, so next up we have Ruthlessness, also previewed by Rebel Resource. This is a 1-cost aggression villainy upgrade. Attached unit gains when this unit attacks and defeats a unit, deal 2 damage to the defending player's base, and it is also gives +2 power, no HP boost, but it's a cheap upgrade and it boosts your power and rewards you for killing units. It's kind of interesting. So it mixes like aggro and control playstyles. So unit combat is typically associated with control, but base damage is aggro. So you can kind of get both at once. And this seems to sort of be an aggression villainy theme as a whole. So Leader Vader has a similar thing where his ping ability damages a unit and the base. And it seems like it could synergize well with Moff Gideon, where his he seems to kind of similarly have a thing where his ability rewards unit combat, but also like aggressive small units. If you use this with them, that seems like it could help with what he's trying to do. Also help with the overwhelm aspect there. I do think that it's somewhat vulnerable timing wise. So you can play this card, and then your opponent sees that you have it and does something to mess with you, or attacks with their unit into you and gets defeated that way. But that way you don't get the bonus for attacking. Something like that. But cheap cards can be tricky. So you could play, let's say, it's a 4-resource turn. You play a 3-cost thing early in the turn. You do some other actions. They think that you're done. Then you drop Ruthlessness and make this attack with the bonus. Could be a nice strategy. I think this works great with units like Boba Fett Disintegrator or Han Solo Reluctant Hero, though there is an aspect penalty issue with Han Solo Reluctant Hero. But those sorts of units have abilities that make them good at repeatedly attacking and defeating enemy units. And Ruthlessness not only gives them bonus stats to make them even better at that, but it also allows you to repeatedly hit the enemy base. I also think this could be very strong on high HP leaders. Like imagine you're playing like Krennic Red, which is not a particularly popular combination right now, but you deploy Krennic, then you put this on him. All of a sudden, he's actually pretty scary. The 7 HP makes him somewhat difficult to deal with, and he can be attacking, clearing units, healing your base, and damaging their base at the same time. So that could be pretty interesting. Overall, I'm not entirely sure where this card will see play, but it strikes me as an interesting option and one that I think very well could be a significant threat. All right. So that's going to do it for the cards that we saw previewed today, I believe. I'm curious, which of these is your favorite? Are any of these cards here things that you especially want to test with? Are you like jumping at the bit? Are you jumping at the bit to put in a hunter deck, or for instance? I personally, I think these are cool. I think the one that I'm most excited about is probably Echo, but we'll see what happens. I've definitely been wrong in some of these evaluations before, and I do have links in the video description below to the original content creator videos that spoiled the cards that were shown by content creators. I'm not linking to the Twitter post or whatever that basically just had Hunter and nothing else. But yeah, so feel free to go and check out the original videos there and see what those guys have to say as well. All right, that's going to about do it for this one, guys. Thanks to you all for watching, and we'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. One final note. I have made some changes to my recording software that will hopefully increase volume. I had a few comments on recent videos saying the volume was too low. So please let me know what you think of the overall volume and sound quality, and whether you think this is a good spot. That's going to do it for real this time. Thanks again for watching, and we'll be back later with some more Star Wars Unlimited content. I will catch you guys later.